Good news. Finally. Huge break in the kidnapping of two California teens. Tamara Brooks and Jacqueline Maris were rescued about an hour ago after cops engaged in a wild shootout with the alleged abductor.
They had stopped the Bronco and that they had the girls in custody. They were safe. And the last word I got, and I just got it, I was walking down here, what the subject is deceased. We're actually taking our plane and we're going to take both parents up there, fly them up there right from here. I've ordered the plane so they can be with their two daughters, so at the sheriff's station there, and be with them and deal with if anything did occur to the girls.
All right, in Los Angeles with the very latest, we've got reporter Jim Hill, child recovery specialist here with me, Scott Bernstein, former LAPD detective Tom Lang. He worked on the O.J. Simpson case, and on the phone, Deputy Richard Weston from the L.A. County Sheriff's Office. And Deputy, I want to start with you. I'm going to say congratulations. That may sound cold and callous since there is a man dead, but I'm going to sound cold and callous. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
What information do you have about the condition of the two girls?
Well, they're being checked at a local hospital right now, and although I don't have specific information, the information we have is that they're in generally good condition.
Okay, do we know, without asking for details, because the issue obviously was a concern about kidnapping, rape, and murder, do we know whether or not these girls were raped?
At this point, we don't know.
Okay, what do we know about the suspect?
Well, what we know about him is that he was already wanted for rape in Kern County, and he had a $3 million warrant for his arrest. He was also a parolee at large, which means he was not reporting to his parole officer. So he was already wanted prior to this incident.
And the car, apparently the car that he tried to set fire to when he took the truck, was one that he stole in Las Vegas, is that correct?
That's right. He apparently that car was taken in a carjacking in Las Vegas.
Okay, well, I know we're going to start some finger pointing about the parole issue, but has anyone contacted that parole officer and figured out why they weren't out tracking someone who was obviously dangerous?
You know, I don't know if they weren't tracking him or not. Anytime a parolee is at large, generally speaking, they are trying to find him because that's one of the jobs of parole in the CDC.
Well, I will make the comment that they're definitely understaffed, so it wouldn't surprise me if that was a problem. Let me turn to Jim Hill. Jim, do you have any additional information about the girls, about the circumstances that you're hearing?
Well, this, of course, wrapped up about 12 hours after the kidnapping took place. It took place about 1 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. This was a kind of a remote Lover's Lane area used by the local high school kids in Lancaster. First, one couple apparently go to this scene, and they're confronted by the man who arrives in his car, which we now know to have been taken in a carjacking. He pulls a gun, he takes the girl captive and ties up the boy. Then another car with the second kidnapped victim and her boyfriend, they arrive, the same thing happens. The suspect pulls the gun, takes her captive, ties up that boy. He then appears to douse his car with flammable liquid, but does not light it on fire. Instead takes his white Ford Bronco belonging to one of the boyfriends and takes the two girls, and off he goes. The boys, or one of them, is able to free themselves, and they call authorities. And at that point, the Amber Alert system is activated, a new system here in California to get out the word to the media and public and law enforcement of a kidnapping. And the hunt is on for the suspect and the vehicle. And, of course, all of this wraps up almost exactly 12 hours after the kidnapping with the safe recovery of the girls and the gunplay, the killing of the suspect.
Deputy, what can you tell us about finding this man? Was it the Amber Alert? Was it simply a cop on the lookout? How was he located? How was he found? And how did the shootout occur?
Well, the person that spotted the vehicle was a county animal control officer in Kern County, and they were aware of it through the massive media attention as well as through the Amber Alert and the department-wide alerts. Once they saw the vehicle, they called the sheriff's department in Kern County, and the sheriff's deputies, upon arrival, became involved in a confrontation with the suspect and ended up shooting him. The details of it, the exact details of the shooting, are being released by Kern County.
Okay, but were the girls still in the truck with this guy when the confrontation occurred? Do you know about that?
I know that they were at the scene because they were immediately rescued. Whether they were in the truck or somewhere nearby, I don't know, but they were definitely there and recovered immediately.
Okay, Tom Lang, we've seen some footage here, and actually we've got it on the screen right now. A camera is showing one of the young men who was taped up standing next to a police or sheriff's officer taking tape off. That bothered you, didn't it?
Very much so. I mean, this is a part of the crime scene. This tape could have various prints belonging to the suspect. This, of course, is before we know who the suspect is, and things ended as satisfactorily as they did. Not just the tape is of concern here, but also the clothing that individual was wearing. We don't know what kind of fiber evidence or trace evidence or even blood that the victim's clothing could reveal, and certainly that tape, that should be taken off by a criminalist. That should be preserved. It's evidence. There could be all sorts of things on that tape. Very bothersome.
It's wonderful to say that in hindsight, but in practical terms, on a day-to-day basis, working in police departments around the country, is it often the case that an awful lot of evidence, not simply because of sloppy work, but the kid is there going, get this tape off of me, I'm pulling it off, that's going to happen a lot, isn't it?
Sure. Well, you have the media there. You've got the camera on this officer, and that is very distracting, believe me. And he's trying to go about his job, and he may be thinking of other things at the time, but that victim should be isolated, should be taken away from the camera, should be taken to a facility, debriefed, and his clothing probably taken from him, as well as this tape. Yeah. You have to focus under these circumstances. Even when the media is there, it's a lot harder to do your job, but you have to focus at the job at hand.
Yeah, well, Scott, you're shaking your head because we're watching the kid as he crumples the tape up, pulling it off. Do officers on the beat realize the kind of responsibility when the criminalists are behind them, that they've really got to protect them? We know they're trained to do this, but I'll bet you a lot of this happens.
Yeah, well, these are officers. These are not trained investigators. And, you know, what Detective Lang said earlier, you've got the media around them, and they're trying to watch the P's and Q's while they're conducting their investigation. I mean, in the tape that we saw just a little while ago, he wasn't even paying attention to anything except his notepad and taking notes. Yeah. What he should be doing is, like Detective Lang said, he should be securing some evidence, the tape, maybe his clothing, sweeping him for fibers and things of that nature. I mean, now it's a moot point. Right. I mean, after what happened, but if it wasn't, that could have been a critical thing with the fibers and maybe any saliva samples or anything that might have been found on the tape, even a fingerprint or latent. Okay,
we have in 12 hours a scenario that, thank God, ended up with these two girls alive, apparently unharmed. Can you give us a bit of a critique? Did it unfold as best as we, the country, the community, the officers could do?
Oh yeah, I think it unfolded exactly how I thought it was going to unfold, quite quickly. You got the media and the sheriff's department did the right thing. I mean, they put the word out immediately. The media was all over putting out that license plate. But you got to realize that the suspect, who is now deceased, made a lot of mistakes. I mean, first of all, he takes two women. I mean, that's a big mistake right there. Why go for two? He has now two bodies he has to watch over. Secondly, he takes another vehicle, which is now going to be broadcast, and it was broadcast all over the place, where they could be looking for this vehicle at all times. And thirdly, you've got a guy that's profiled, that probably was on an alcoholic binge, was probably drug dependent. Now we find out he's out on a $3 million warrant. He's desperate, and basically what he was looking for was a suicide by cop, and that's what he got. He got off cheap, he's a coward, and he really got off easy.
Oh, God. Well, in terms of the Amber Alert, all this sort of thing, that if you were to look at this, say, boy, that's a textbook A+. Now, yes, we know now it's an A+ because he's deceased, which is fine with me. But is that why we say that? I mean, if he was still out there, still on the loose, still with those two girls, what would you be saying?
Well, the only thing you say at that point is that maybe the evidence that we could have secured at the scene would have helped expedite the investigation. I mean, we had to put a face to them.
Yeah.
We had basically a bare description by these two men. One was taken from gunpoint, never got a chance to turn around and look at the assailant.
Yeah.
The other one got a little bit of look at him. But, you know, it was climactic in the fashion that he was eventually going to get caught within 24 hours. I think any law enforcement authority could tell you that. So it's going to be climactic in some fashion. The good thing that came out of it is the two girls are safe and secure, and no harm came to them. And at this point, the authorities probably know whether if they were raped or not. But at this point, they're not going to foolishly release that information.
Well, they don't need to release it because the man, had he survived, would have been charged with that crime, and wonderfully, it ended up with everyone safe. And again, Deputy, our gratitude to the department. Please pass it on. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Deputy Richard Weston, Jim Hill, Detective Tom Lang, Scott Bernstein, thank you all. Now, we're going to take a break. On the other side, a real change of pace. We're going to meet Atlas, the rescue